Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed our opening session on what we can expect in our industry post-pandemic. And if you could not make that session, no worries. All our ACT Tech Summit sessions are being recorded, and they will be available on ACT's website sometime next week. So we are excited to present our second session of the day, where we're going to learn just what a managed service provider is and why many of us need one. So as you may already know, if you joined us for the last session, I'm Ginny Winkworth. I'm program manager for ACT. And I want to remind everyone that all attendees are muted. However, we do welcome your questions. So please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit those. We have set aside some time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. So join us at the end, and our speaker is going to be happy to answer any questions that we gathered during the session or any questions that you have during the Q&A portion. So now here's Ron Berg, Executive Director of ACT, to introduce our presenter.
Thanks, Ginny. I've been looking forward to the second session of our ACT Tech Summit because it's going to provide some great insights and takeaways for agents on what areas they need to look at when considering a managed service provider. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy this session. Getting and vetting a managed service provider is not a one-dimensional process, as our presenter, Nate Ginter, is going to dive into. So let's get right into it. I'd like to introduce the Chief Technology Officer of Vine IT, Nate Ginter. Nate, take it away.
All right, Ron. Well, thank you very much. My name is Nate Ginter. I am, as Ron mentioned, the Chief Technology Officer for a managed IT services company called Vine IT. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And today we're going to talk about a topic that hopefully some of you have already been through, but for those of you who haven't, maybe it'll provide you a little bit of info on what you need to know about MSPs or managed IT service providers. As I mentioned, my name is, of course, Nate Ginter. I do serve as our Chief Technology Officer as a cybersecurity and IT company. I've been doing this about 15 years now. So I've done everything from designing, implementing, and maintaining hundreds of high security, low downtime networks for businesses and agencies like yourselves across the country. I do hold an alphabet soup full of different credentials in different areas of IT, but the important one for today's part, I am a Microsoft certified systems engineer, and I am also a certified cybersecurity auditor. So I'm not just concerned with making things work, I'm also concerned with making them work securely for our client base. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a couple of things we're going to go over today. We're going to briefly go over the threat landscape. This is just where I give you a couple of basic facts that are designed to scare you. And then we're going to talk about sort of the antidote for those. So there's a model called Breakfix and how that differs from a managed IT services model. We're going to talk a little bit about the key functions of a managed services provider, how to price shop for an MSP, and what you should be looking for in a potential MSP candidate. Definitely want to be looking for more than one quote there for sure. And then at the end, we're going to go over some of your questions and answers, which hopefully, you guys will be able to have a good experience and take away a couple of things that may be unique to your business if you feel like I didn't maybe cover your agency's specific needs in the discussion. So the big thing that I want to get across right up front is that there are no free lunches in IT. You will always pay the cost of implementing good IT and security practices, whether you pay for them through downtime or aggravated employees who are less efficient and you're losing little pieces of salary by them having an inefficient work environment. Those little hidden costs will actually equal what it costs to do things right in the first place. So one of the questions that I always hope people keep in mind as you're thinking about a potential service provider or how you're handling technology in your agency is, would you want to do business with a company that treated your data the way that you're treating your client's data? That's something that we try to pay close attention to and what we do as a trusted provider of services, and hope that you're taking your client's data with the same level of seriousness. So there's a couple of things going on in the cyberspace threat landscape right now that's worth mentioning for people in the insurance industry, and that is probably no surprise to you guys that finance and insurance is actually the #1 targeted industry for data breaches and ransomware attacks. We find that about 38% of them are due to malicious code, which can be software, whether it's ransomware or some sort of attack of that nature. Once they get in, typically through email, but there are some other attack vectors as well. Bad websites, people, employees using terminals for play rather than work, and some things that are outside the realm of normal business operations. Once they get in, they typically actually don't even try to infect everything and run away. About 20% of them will sit on your network and try to learn things about your network rather than just launching a blind attack right away to sort of see how they can maximize their investment in taking your business down. And then about another 20% of those see that there's bad access by an administrator with weak credentials, a lot of things that can be taken care of by putting those property security metrics in place. So good MSP can help you really limit those vendors. So, or vectors, what should I say? So let's talk a little bit about what an MSP or managed service provider actually is. So managed services is a way of looking at IT rather than just say calling a friend or a small vendor. We like to call them like a chuck in a truck model, who shows up only when you're having issues, versus a true IT partner that you work with who is monitoring your systems and making sure that they're protected and providing you with better workflows to make sure that in this modern environment that things are buttoned up as much as possible. So actually 60% of companies worldwide work with a managed service provider, and the primary goal is to simplify network and IT operations. Another 54% of companies in that actually say that the managed service providers give them more flexibility. So especially in a world where we've got a remote workforce, maybe everybody's not in the office all the time, having a partner that knows those systems and can still monitor them for even when they're not inside of the building is a very important thing. And we're seeing that 73% of businesses in the past year have reported that they've experienced some type of interruption. So when those interruptions do occur, are you getting the most rapid service, getting back up and running as quickly as possible so that you're not paying employees who are unable to work and generate revenue for you? So as we touched on briefly, there's another model out there called Breakfix, and the reason why it's a bad idea, or there's a number of them, but here are the big ones. Number one, a lot of times you're getting a Band-Aid solution. So when you call somebody only when you're having a problem, they're coming out to kind of fix the goal for you, but or fix the problem for you, but they might not be putting in place something that serves your long-term IT vision, sort of a Band-Aid fix where there may be a better piece of software to also consider using in the future, or maybe there's a different piece of hardware that's going to not break down like the one that you may be using currently did. The other thing is that they're reactive and they're not proactive. And what I know, the proactive is a popular buzzword about that, but in this case what that means is somebody who's actively monitoring your systems and working on them in a regular basis can sometimes actually see things before they occur. Something as simple as your hard drive starting to fill up. If they have the right metrics on there, they can actually see that and detect some of those things for you before they become a critical issue to prevent you from working. Another common side effect of Breakfix IT is poor documentation. Typically when you call somebody in, they fix it. You might get a small bill with some basic details, but they're not keeping a repository of all the issues and change management, which we'll touch on a little bit more later here in my talk. And those things over time can just lead to bad IT, practices, and something that we can also call critical information silo, meaning if you're not working with somebody on a regular basis and only when there's trouble, they can end up setting various systems up for you. Or, even if you do work with a single person, a single operator on a regular basis, if something happens to that person, you can be left in a case where you don't have any access to the critical systems that you're depending on to run your business. This is something we actually see fairly often, and so one of the bigger pain points in working with a smaller company who's not proactive. So the last one, and this is something that is not a huge thing, but it does happen from time to time. When you're working with a break-fix model, you're paying someone by the hour, not to make sure that you have the fewest number of issues. So there may be things out there that actually drive their revenue down by putting better systems in place that maybe require you to call them a little bit less. So with an MSP, you're typically paying them a flat rate, and the less problems you have is actually better for them. So they become a much better IT steward and a much better IT partner for you. So the key functions of an MSP are going to be expertise, troubleshooting, updates, protection, and documentation. With expertise, what I like to say is, we've probably been asked about this before. When you have an MSP, they're dealing with, typically tens, if not hundreds or thousands of different companies and agencies of all shapes and sizes. So if you're having a problem, or you're even thinking about something new, hey, I'd like to implement e-signing for my clients. Yeah, we've been asked that question a couple hundred times before. Here's some great products that we've tried. Here's what the pitfalls to look out for. They can really help you make sure that you're getting the best technology and putting the right things in place. Typically, things like remote work, obviously became a big deal over the last year. Any of our clients that were working with us, we actually already had remote options in place for them. So that transition was very easy. And, most MSPs out there can really help you make sure that in whatever happens to come, whether it's, okay, well, all of a sudden, everybody can't come into the office. What are our options? They're not just, kind of seeing this one or two times here and there. They're actively doing it for multiple people and can really get you some great recommendations. Another thing that comes, and this is something that's kind of unique to the expertise of an IT company like a managed service provider, is, hey, can you get me a deal on something? Sometimes there are vendors that we can go to that, a person who's just, buying things off of the shelf or going down to Best Buy when they have a problem, or somebody they need to replace a computer for. There's vendors that are what they call channel only, pieces of software and pieces of hardware that only get sold to managed service providers. So troubleshooting is obviously another huge component of operating an MSP. And, it's really great to be able to leverage the power of a team versus a single person. I'd already touched earlier on, hey, what happens if that person falls ill or isn't able to respond to whatever your need? And this is something that affects whether or not, maybe you have an in-house go-to guy that is maybe performing a couple of job functions, or someone that you've worked with in the past who comes in when you need something to, something troubleshot or have a further look at an issue. So whenever there's a team there, I like to say, I go on vacation, my company doesn't go on vacation. It gives you a little bit of a safety net. God forbid something happens on a day when, somebody themselves has fallen ill or they're another client. It's helpful to make sure that you've got multiple backstops there in the event that you have a critical problem. Typically, your managed service provider is going to have a wider variety of expertise. So, we have clients across all kinds of different industries, but there's, different needs for each of them, that there's different functions that they want to perform. We're exposed to a larger tool set for troubleshooting when things go wrong. So there's a lot there that you get just by the nature of working with somebody who is actively monitoring and managing, scores of clients versus, just a few that they might see here and there from time to time. The other thing that you get with an MSP is that there's something called RMM, or remote monitoring and remediation software. Every MSP uses one. There's a handful of them out there that have a huge market share, and they have a number of not just monitors built in, but also what they call remediation fixes. So if we start to see that, hey, somebody's hard drive's filling up, their scripts will actually automatically run in the background to try and reduce some of that space that might be taken up with, old system files or junk that was laying around, and clean those up automatically is just one example of a fix, but something that actually you get with, establishing a contract with an MSP. So Updates are another huge component of what a MSP is going to take off of your hands and the burden of you trying to scramble around and make sure that different operating systems, whether it's Macintosh or Windows laptops or any servers that you may have in house, you need them to be updated. But I always like to say, Microsoft doesn't make mistakes, but when they do, it's good to have somebody with some expertise that can take a look at that for you. It's also one of the big benefits that you're going to get from working with an MSP is reporting. So, most people, they'll turn on Windows updates here or there. If you've got, an IT guy who comes around, once a year and takes a look at your stuff, that doesn't give you a good handle on how things are actually being implemented. If there's a new security bug that Microsoft has detected, every Tuesday they push out a new update. Is that being done for you? Well, if you're not getting reporting on those things, it's tough to know. So a good MSP can show you that your machines are actually up to date. Another thing that happens is, again, maybe Microsoft or Apple pushes out an update that has some unintended consequences or breaks some functionality. Working with an MSP who's got, thousands of machines that are under management, when one of those things happen, we can actually identify them and block them from being run in our system. I have usually in parentheses here because there are some updates that Microsoft forces out and you can't stop even if you tell them to. So there's a small caveat there, but something that is worth noting. And also updating is more than just making sure that your endpoints are covered from a software perspective. It is awesome when you're able to make sure that your firewalls are updated. If you've got access points that you're using for your wireless technology, that's all taken care of for you. And then your programs themselves, whether they're Adobe or Microsoft Office suites like Word and Excel and Outlook, all of these things have updates, and from time to time they actually break functionality or something changes. It's great to have somebody to lean on when you start to see issues from those changes. And then protection is another big part of it. So we always like to say that the security systems and software that you're running are the managed service provider's job. Compliance is your job. So compliance meaning, if you have financial services data, if you fall under HIPAA regulations or Gramm-Leach-Bliley recommendations, there is no plug and play system for that. But an MSP can help you get further down the goal line of making sure that you're in compliance. A couple of things that they'll provide some great help with is centralized notification and reporting. So from your MSP, you should have a great executive summary that's showing, hey, not just do all your machines have antivirus installed, but it's been updated recently. Your backups are running well. What's the update status of all the different machines that you're taking care of? Also, they can assist with something called change management reporting, whether it's HIPAA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, New York DFS. All of these standards ask about change management, meaning when somebody comes in and maybe they make some security changes to your Office 365 environment, or they put in a new piece of security hardware, is that actually documented anywhere? And a good MSP will make sure that's done for you and also be able to provide you access to reporting of the different tickets and projects that they've done for you over the past month or year, depending on how often you review those things. We also get, typically speaking, a quicker resolution time when there are issues. If somebody does happen to click on a bad link or they suspect they have spam, having somebody that they can, either call or email, right away, and get that instant response, it can really help minimize the damage if something actually does occur in the organization. Another big advantage is what we call platform hardening. So by default, most companies out there are using Office 365 or Microsoft 365, as it's now called. One of the things that people don't realize, there's about 20 best practices security recommendations that you need to go through and make sure are enabled to actually make sure that people from the outside can't constantly start, trying to authenticate to your platform and maybe breach one of your employees' accounts. And that's something that an MSP is going to have experience in rolling out. So even when you're rolling out a new project, whether it's something like an Office 365 or a new Dropbox instance, or any number of things that are out there, even the Adobe DocuSign platform, they can help you make sure that they're being rolled out the most secure way possible so you don't have issues down the road. And again, as I mentioned previously, there's some products, both in the security side of things and the backup side of things, that companies just don't sell to individual small businesses, but we have access to as managed service providers. And there's some really cool cloud to cloud based backup systems that are coming out for a lot of the newer technologies out there that they just won't sell to individual users. And boy, it's nice to be able to deploy those for our clients. So documentation is another big challenge we touched on a little bit. We like to say what's measured is managed. So you should get that change management reporting. You should get that executive summary. You should be able to prove that you're doing the things that you're saying you're doing in a security document. I know, ACT has published some great information in their cyber guide about what sort of things, you should have access to and you should be doing from a policy and procedure standpoint. And some of those things are things that you need to report on a regular basis, and your company can make that a reality for you. I have it in red here because this is the standard, unfortunately, process for most agencies that we go into. If we do perform a risk assessment for them, is we see that they actually aren't having any of these things checked on a regular basis, despite the fact that they reference it in their policy manual. So it really helps you stand up to your word and do what we know is right and what leads to the best results for protecting your data. So a couple things to look at when you're price shopping for an MSP. You want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. I call this kind of what's in the contract versus a service level agreement. So a service level agreement is going to tell you, hey, we're going to respond in a timely fashion. It'll typically be this long for us to acknowledge your request, and then this long to get you over, into a resolution capability. That is different than what's in the actual contract that you sign. So you want to make sure that you're not just being told something, that they're willing to meet that in paper. One of the things that can be a little troubling when you get vendors, if you get 3 different quotes from 3 different IT vendors, some of them charge a little bit differently based on, a la carte services. So examples would be some people might charge you extra if they actually need to come out for an on-site visit, whereas another company may include that. You can also run into a situation where maybe, through your managed service provider, one provider might include backup services and the storage that it takes to run those efficiently. Some might charge, again, for the individual user account that, based on the number of employees. Some might charge per device. And depending on, some places have more computers and they have employees and vice versa. You want to be able to establish kind of what I call a bottom line average. So if you look at the total cost of their monthly service and you divide that by the number of employees you have, that can give you a pretty good idea of what their bottom line pricing is there. So typical industry pricing right now for fully outsourced IT is ranging between $100 to $250 per user. There is a lot of factors that go into that number. It also, again, it includes things like our, on-site visits provided, what level of service are they actually offering? Are they offering things like, backup services, antivirus services, issue remediation? Are they all rolled into one flat rate, or are there some a la carte items? So a great way to really know is, rather than just trying to read through a contract, talk to the person who's involved in your sales process and give them some real world scenarios for problems. So, okay, if I get a virus and it spreads on the network, is this actually covered? Or would I get an additional bill? If I need to roll out, 3 new computers for new employees, what would my costs look like for that? Is that included in my contract? Or is that going to be something, what we call out of scope or project work for getting those things completed? So when you're armed with those pieces of info and those conversations, it really helps open up a good idea of what you're actually going to be able to expect from their service on a day-to-day basis. So as far as managed IT goes, there's obviously a lot that goes into selecting who's going to be your IT partner. One of the big things that you want to look for is, again, is this sort of a break-fix contract in disguise? Are they charging me extra for support or extra when I roll things out? You want to be aware of that on-demand sales model. Another thing to look out for is compliance experience. So, a good managed service provider for your agency should be familiar with the requirements for your industry and for your unique policies and procedures. Even something as simple as multi-factor authentication, making sure, when their technicians log in, that they use individual user accounts for logging and tracking purposes, all good things to make sure that they know. Industry certifications, what type of certifications do their support staff maintain? Again, going back to that kind of alphabet soup of credentialing I was showing you there in the beginning that I personally hold, I make sure that all of my employees, continue to develop their skill sets as they move on. So it's always good to ask, hey, do you have people that are Microsoft certified? Do you have people that are certified in Cisco or Meraki hardware, those sorts of things? So, here are the things that they're absolute experts in. One thing there's no substitute for is references. A good managed IT service provider can get you a list of contacts for businesses and agencies, that are your scope and size. So, if you've got, whether you're a couple locations or you just got a single operating agency there, it's good to be able to call some people and talk to them and see what their experience is like, where where they excel, where they might need work, and anybody who's worth their salt is going to have at least a couple of clients that are happy with their service. So another thing to look out for is for whether they're willing to sign a business associate agreement or what we would call like a vendor non-disclosure. Those are forms that actually bind them to providing compliant practices for support. Again, making sure that you're protected with multi-factor when their people come in, that they're handling your information, as they have the keys to your castle in a secure way, and also just a general good coverall. The non-disclosure agreement will make sure that they're contractually bound from maybe taking your client list and giving it to people. That would seem like a no-brainer, but there's crazier stories in the industry about unscrupulous providers for sure. So another thing you want to ask about is security incident management. You want to ask a potential provider to explain their security incident response procedures. Points to discuss would include like proactive responses, communication, how they're going to contact you and make you part of that process as they work to resolve your incidents, and what their remediation processes are. So how does it escalate? Obviously sometimes something can just be a little pop-up on a website and somebody mistakes that for a major issue. What do they do when it turns out that it's something more than that, or there's an alert that comes through in their system? And then again, how they're going to report on that once that's done. And then reporting in general, maintaining compliance really requires auditing and reporting of update management, change management, antivirus system efficacy, system and security components for your devices containing or processing non-public information. So you want to be sure that your provider will produce them for you monthly, and it's okay to ask them for a sample of what the reporting looks like. It's a good way to kind of see the quality level between different organizations, is to look at what they can actually hand you on paper, that they give to their clients on a regular basis. So just a quick little bit about us. We are based out of St. Pete, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area. We've been doing this for over 40 years of combined experience. We're a Florida FAIA preferred vendor, and we have managed agencies of all sizes. So I myself have worked in formerly out of medical IT with a very large degree of expertise in HIPAA and compliance experience. So please feel free to open it up here for some questions. And if you guys would like to know any more, I'd be happy to hear what you guys thought and were curious about at this time.
Thanks so much, Nate. That was a really solid presentation. I felt like it's great info and overview. And I think, Nate, it's important for us to know, all of us, to keep in mind that the majority of the Big I members, the agencies, are small to small, medium size, and
sure
may not be able to effectively handle everything that you discussed.
Right.
It's hard to do everything, and much less doable to do everything well. And what Nate just discussed really needs to be executed well and monitored consistently. Right, Nate?
Absolutely. And that's really, one of the things, I know I've talked a lot about a lot of different topics there in that, but one of the things that comes up right away is that the main goal of your IT provider is to simplify your IT operations. So in that simplification process, we're not just talking about, hey, making sure my computers run well and I can log in and get to where I need to get. It's also making sure those compliance obligations that we have as insurance agencies, whether it's, you're a sole provider or you've got 100 employees, there's certain things that everybody has to do. And as I said, your IT guy can't do 100% of the work for you, but if they can get you to the 60, 70 yard line, with what they're doing for you, that's a definite value add, even beyond making your business run more efficiently, for sure.
Absolutely. So I think at this point, as Nate said, we're going to stop or wrap the presentation part of this session and move to taking your questions that you've been submitting through the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All right. Thanks again for that, Nate. We did have a number of questions that are coming in that we're fielding. I'm going to start with, we've got about 5 or so minutes that we can take questions. And we've got some really sharp questions, I think, here. So I'm going to start kind of with the most high level one. You had a few screens ago talked about what an average cost is. And one of our attendees asked, is that an average cost annually or monthly? And I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure we get it.
That's an average cost monthly per user. So let me just say, this ties into another question that I saw, which was, what's the minimum cost that there is typically? That will vary depending on the vendor you select. So some MSPs have a 20 employee minimum for companies. Some of them will work with you if you only have one person. What you're looking for there is what they call an account minimum. So the minimum size that they'll work with, and it will vary from person to person. We actually don't do it based on size. At our company, we have $1,000 minimum account balance we have. So basically that covers you up to 8 employees. If you've got 3, it's 1,000. If you've got 8, it's 1,000. And then it's an additional charge per employee after that as you grow. But different places charge in different ways.
That's good clarification. As long as we're in that area. Another question just came in. What's the minimum size for an agency to employ an MSP? And this person asked, for example, 3 people versus 10 branch. Some MSP or vendors require like 30, I think.
Correct. So that literally, it's like saying I want to, buy a house. So some people might only, need a single, family dwelling. Other people might need, a huge mansion. It really depends, with the company that you're working on. I say, especially for the smaller people, you want to really go out there and do a little research in your area. We serve all of Florida and, the surrounding states. Some places are very small and they're actually looking for, the single prop people. The big thing you want to make sure, though, with some of the smaller MSPs is that they're able to meet those other requirements I was talking about with some of that compliance expertise and things. There's a lot of people that get roped into what is basically a break-fix contract where they're not actually monitoring your systems, providing those pieces of software that you need, monitoring your compliance with things. They're not doing change management reporting for you. So, those are some things you can look at. Again, just to clarify, it's a great question. If you ask 10 MSPs, you will probably get about 5 different answers to that. Probably. But we'll work with anybody. Plug.
All right. So this is and I love the way these questions are being asked because they kind of each one builds off the previous answer. One of the first questions that came in was for an organization that already has IT. So we know that there are agencies that don't have IT, much less security. But for an organization that already has an IT person in-house, can an MSP complement them, and how?
Absolutely. So number one, I love in-house IT. I did it myself for a while, but keep in mind they're typically working on your network all day long and your particular functionality. They don't necessarily have the breadth of expertise for helping you with new solutions, knowing about the new things that are coming out for different ways to secure, so a lot of the cloud-based platforms that are out there, for example, because they're just not in them. Another thing is that obviously one guy is one point of failure. If that person is sick, that person gets COVID. Well, great. Now, what do? We've got an office that we need to keep running. What's our backstop for that? So it gives you access to a whole team, generally a greater degree of expertise. And also you can do another sort of analysis on this. The reporting that they're providing you, they may not even know what they're missing. So I always say, even if you love your in-house person, talk to an MSP and let them tell you what they can do for you, in a proposal, and then you'll know, hey, oh, okay, no, I see, we don't have X, Y, and Z. And even if you just take that back to the local guy, you're a little bit better informed at a minimum. But in reality, it is very hard for in-house IT to keep up with the capabilities of an entire team of professionals that do nothing but kill issues all day long. I'm very fortunate to have a great team that we work with. That, quite frankly, I'm a CTO, and half my guys are telling me about new stuff that's happening out there because they're running into it across like 100 different companies.
Sure.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's strength in numbers. And what you're talking about, part of what you were talking about, Nate, is great contingency planning, really
Right.
as a part of disaster planning in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and some of the products we have access to, you can't go buy off the shelf
right.
as just an agency by yourself. So that's another thing that is also a pretty cool boon for working with an outside environment.
So this next question will come across as though I paid this person to ask this, but I promise everyone watching, I did not solicit nor pay this, so I'm going to read it verbatim. This webinar is so needed. So many agencies don't realize what their IT person should be providing for them. They often trust that everything is being handled. Is there an audit service available to check the health of an agency's infrastructure? And I think that might go back to kind of the document area that you were talking about before.
Correct. So what I tried to avoid doing too much was going into IT versus cybersecurity and compliance. Those are kind of two separate wheelhouses. We actually perform both. The answer to that is yes, and please feel free to contact me after. I'm always happy to give you a free consult to tell you what to be looking for, from your IT professional. But that is a great point. So, what you're missing, your internal guy is, again, he's not going to come in and say, hey, here's the things that I'm terrible at, and here's what I haven't been doing for you. So having an outside view of that, whether, even just in an audit, is a great idea. In addition to that, this goes back to how can an MSP complement you? We all hope that, we hire the best people in the world. But if you've got somebody internally who's got all the keys to your castle and there's no oversight of that, and you've got no one to go to, if that person chooses to exit in an unprofessional, or God forbid, heart attack, drops dead, hit by a bus, you're left with a situation where the person that you depend on is not there to help you even transition to somebody else in a timely fashion. It can lead to some real problems, which we've always, been able to work through it, but those real situations do exist.
Okay. Wow. That was some great insight. And I love this, particularly for this topic, that the questions that came across from the attendees, thank you attendees, were so punchy and so to the point. So I'm sure Nate would love to have you contact him, but
Absolutely.
His information is in the bios and profiles part of our Tech Summit site. And part of it really is whomever you need to reach out to them and figure out your stance, where to start, what you need to expect, where you should be covered, and get that help. So Nate, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all.
All right. What we're going to do is stop this portion of this session and get you all prepped for the next session, which is coming right up at the top of the hour. That is mining agency data. So we'll see you all very soon. Take care.